What's up, everyone? Welcome back inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center after another Wednesday media session with those Ohio State Buckeyes, those 2-0 Ohio State Buckeyes. Tim, you all know him. That's Tim May. I'm Spencer Holbrook. He needs no introduction. Tim, let's get right into it, man. We're not going to be here for too long tonight. What did you learn from these Buckeyes as they prepare to take on Toledo in the Horseshoe at 7 p.m. on Fox on Saturday night?
That now that they've gotten a chance defensively, the defensive guys, they've gotten a chance to drive that Jim Knowles defense around a couple of games. They really like the way it handles. And, you know, dude, you can talk about defense all you want. Defense, you know, stats, etc. Defense is about keeping the other team from getting in your end zone. Yes, they've given up, 5 field goals over the first 2 games. They've given up 1 touchdown. That's the bottom line on the defense. And the defense seems to be playing better and better the more it goes. But like I pointed out to you earlier this week, it looks to me like more and more offenses are going to just start trying to hit at the edges of this thing, and we'll see how this defense evolves from there, whether they can get more immediate pressure on the quarterback, or even more than they've gotten already with Mike Hall and that group right on down the line. But that's what stood out. And Lathan Ransom, you know, wow, just thinking about him being on that turf at the Rose Bowl with a compound fractured lower leg on January 1, playing the way he has the first 2 games. He and Josh Proctor at that safety spot. Josh Proctor started last week, a little bit of a surprise to me based on the way the previous game went, but he is more than happy to share time with Josh Proctor. When his number's called, he wants to get in there, but there's a story in the making right there.
Absolutely. And another guy we talked to and we talked about on Monday, Tim, was Kaden Curry. We talked about him on the Tuesday show as well, which unfortunately didn't make it to YouTube because of some technical difficulties, but find that on any podcast platform you want. I wanted to make sure to plug that because Tuesday's show simply just didn't work out for the visual learners, but the audio learners got everything they needed on Tuesday. But Kaden Curry, we talked about him a little bit. I'd like to talk about him again because here's a guy who, you know, Ohio State doesn't really choose to put a lot of freshmen out there to the media unless it's a different kind of freshman. And you try to read tea leaves sometimes, Tim. The fact that Ohio State was willing to put him out there and Ohio State was okay with Sports Information Director Jerry Emig putting Kaden Curry out here as a true freshman in the limelight to all of these reporters, that tells you that Ohio State knows he's about to have an impact or a role, in my opinion. You don't really see a lot of freshmen come out here and do these on Wednesday nights, and so I'm interested to see, you know, he had a lot of things to say too, but just the fact that he was here to talk to us, I'm interested in the fact that they did that because I think that leads to playing time for Kaden Curry.
Yes, it shows they have plans for Kaden Curry down
Absolutely.
the road. Dude, when you come off the edge the way he did, yeah, it was against Arkansas State, basically in the second half. When you come off the edge the way he did the other night, just basically verifying what you've been hearing about him through preseason camp, and a little bit you got to see of him in the spring game, which I thought right then he was showing stuff. I remember I wrote a story about him after the spring game. But that shows they have plans for Kaden Curry. And I want to point out that it's very unfortunate that after practice video we did yesterday didn't make it because I did not interrupt you one time in that video, I don't think. Maybe once later when I got into it, but I'm going to hold up my hand politely now whenever I have something to say to you or to interject, and I even have a little pointer here to do that with. But it's unfortunate some of our watchers didn't get to see that.
Well, and that's okay, Tim. We'll continue to do that, as well as the Buckeyes will continue to try to put some wins on the board. Didn't really have an offensive day out here. We talked to Donovan Jackson. We talked to DeJuan Jones. It's easy for me to say. Those guys have some good things to say, but they don't really feel like this run game is where it needs to be. And I kind of wrote about that a little bit on Lettermen Row on Wednesday, that this run game has been explosive, but it's been kind of, as you like to say now, feast or famine. You know, you've got the 40-yard runs by TreVeyon Henderson. You've got the big explosive runs by Maya Williams, but you've also got, I think, half of TreVeyon Henderson's runs and almost half of Maya Williams' runs on Saturday against Arkansas State were for 5 yards or fewer. And so that tells you that this run game, it looks really good on paper because the yards per carry, the stats are there, and all the numbers show you that they're good, but you start to crunch those numbers a little bit, and this run game isn't where it should be.
Yeah, ask Notre Dame about that. Ohio State beat Notre Dame up the last 20 minutes of that game a couple of weeks ago. Notre Dame could not stop Marshall's run game.
Yeah.
The makings are there for a powerful Ohio State run game, and it's one of those things like you and I've talked about before. you got to do it too, though. You know, you've got to run game. You talk all about your run game, and now you got to go out there and actually call run plays. But this offense had several just big time breakaway explosive plays on Saturday. That takes away probably every explosive play you have of 30 yards or more, takes away probably at least 2, maybe sometimes 4 or 5 runs you could have gotten in as you were moving toward the end zone, if in fact you got there. So, you know, the bottom line is, at the end of the year, what do the stats look like? What does the balance look like? That's what matters most. It's not from one game to the next.
Well, and luckily, Tim, they didn't really need to run the ball on Saturday because C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka had a pretty good thing going there through the air. But they still did get things done on the ground. That's not to dismiss what they did do, because there were some positives, there were some good things, particularly the tight end blocking through 2 games has been as good as I can remember at Ohio State the last few years. Jeremy Rucker and Luke Farrell were both very gifted at blocking as tight ends, but G. Scott and Cade Stover, I'm going to give them a tip of the hat, because G. Scott was out here talking about still trying to become a tight end physically and still trying to get there. He looks like one now, and you've seen proof of concept with him at tight end now, throwing those blocks, and you'll see him catch the ball a couple times. It's coming for G. Scott. Yeah,
240 pounds now. I asked him about it. That's where he's at from a weight standpoint. Number 2, we talked about this in the spring. Their challenge as a coaching staff, and even for G. Scott, was to get him in as a bona fide tight end in games where they could afford to do that early this year, so he can establish himself as a fellow going in, that he's not just some glorified wide receiver playing tight end, that he's not going to just go out in the slot and run routes. That was always the plan. You know, I think somebody commented on the fact that Arkansas State was sending guys on the field like he was a wide receiver at one point when he was in there on Saturday. At the end of the game, they were sending folks in there for 12 personnel when he was on the field with Cade Stover and whomever. That's a major jump for G. Scott in his quest to definitely become a factor on this football team, and then later perhaps getting to the NFL and being that versatile guy that every NFL team is looking for now. But his block on the edge there on that one of the Travion Henderson touchdowns, man, that's good on anybody's video.
Yeah.
And like I told him, man, once you put that on video, the opponents are having to watch it. They're having to deal with it. Can they take you lightly as a tight end? Not after that.
Yeah, his time will come in the passing game as well. I know that right now he's viewed as a blocker, but newsflash, guys, he was a wide receiver for a long time. He's pretty good at it, Tim. He's a borderline 5-star prospect wide receiver. Those hands haven't gone anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ohio State get him more involved, especially from 12 personnel, because we've already seen now Cade Stover's on pace for 30 catches, which is like an Ohio State benchmark that you know, well, everybody wants to see the tight end catch 30 balls. Well, Cade Stover's on pace. That's going to leave a couple guys open if you have to defend Cade Stover. One of them will be G. Scott Jr., and so it's interesting the different ways they can take this offense. The one thing they do need to do, circling back to the original point, is that they've got to be able to run the football consistently, and it's there half the time, but it needs to be there more than half the time. It needs to be consistent, and they know that. And you heard that from Donovan Jackson. You heard that from DeJuan Jones. You'll hear that probably from the running backs. I know Tony Alford's probably crunching the film, and Justin Fry trying to get these things figured out. But these are early season kinks, Tim, and you're only 2 games in. You've still got a lot of time to figure everything out. Yeah.
A guy I always enjoy talking to, always enjoy having a moment or 5 with, is Emeka Egbuka. We talked, of course, about that touchdown he had up the gut on Saturday against Arkansas State when he was basically running a drag route and then cut it up the middle, take off up the seam, and C.J. Stroud had the patience to wait for it. I'm writing about that for Thursday's LettermenRow.com. Just about the way C.J. Stroud, just the patience he shows in the passing game, but also his receivers are doing the same thing. They're having patience. They know that if they run their route, they run it correctly, there's a good chance they're getting the football. And it's just that, you know, C.J. Stroud probably made that step last year, really, when you think about it. But he's taken another 2 or 3 steps in that regard, in that development. But Emeka Egbuka, what a joy to talk to every time we get to talk to him. I think over the last 2 weeks, it was interesting to me, because you talk to Emeka, you talk to Marvin Harrison Jr., they're not going to slam any other receiver in this group. They're not going to, you know, put down Julian Fleming. He hadn't played the first 2 games because of some malady he had just before the season opener. they're not going to definitely slam Jackson Smith and Jigba because of the year he had last year, record-setting year he had last year from a school standpoint. But these two guys deserve to be on the field anytime you've got 3 receivers on the field for sure, and maybe sometimes when you only got 2. It's still, Jackson Smith and Jigba still not been declared. He's definitely going to play on Saturday. It's looking like he's going to get that shot. Looks like Julian Fleming is too. But Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr., like Emeka was talking about, they talked about being that twosome receiver tandem.
Yeah, there you go.
Going somewhere when they first showed up here that you'd have to contend with, and it looks like the time has come.
Yeah, and Julian Fleming, if he can come back, if Jackson Smith and Jigba can come back, the more the merrier for the Buckeyes in the passing game. But the bottom line is, on Saturday in the Horseshoe at 7 p.m. on Fox, Emeka Egbuka is going to be a factor because he has to be. He's proven that he can get the job done, whether Jackson Smith and Jigba's on the field or not. So he will be there on Saturday night, as will we be there on Saturday night in the Horseshoe for Ohio State and Toledo. Not a lot of Rockets talking here, Tim. We've got some Rockets info coming at lettermenrow.com on Thursday with a video from the Toledo Blades' David Briggs. Talk to him a little bit about what to expect from the Rockets. Make sure you look out for that video. Make sure you check us out on YouTube all year long as we cover Ohio State there. Subscribe to that channel. Make sure to come check us out at the Lettermen Lounge. We're answering subscriber questions whenever they pop up. You can get all of that coverage from Tim, myself, and Matt Parker for the recruiting side for just $1 right now at lettermenrow.com. That's a hell of a deal, in my opinion, Tim. I think it is for you too. But we will see you there. We'll see you in the Horseshoe on Saturday night. And just stick with us for full coverage of Ohio State Buckeyes at lettermenrow.com.
And 0 interruptions. That's going to be the case from now on.